The first snowfall of November clung to the windshield, melting into crooked rivulets as I turned into my sister's driveway. Through the frosted glass, her house glowed with warm light, gold spilling out of the tall windows, voices carrying faintly to where I sat in the car. Laughter, silverware clinking, the low hum of football on a TV in the background. All the familiar sounds of Thanksgiving, the same soundtrack I had heard every year growing up. I stayed there for a moment with the engine idling, my hand resting on the key. I wasn't nervous exactly, but there was a knot low in my chest, the kind that tightened whenever I had to walk back into this family tableau. No matter how many years passed, stepping into that house always felt like stepping into an old play where my role was already written. The one they teased, the one they pitted, the one they never quite saw as belonging at the grown-ups' table. I killed the engine, took a steadying breath, and climbed out. The cold hit like a blade. My shoes crunched over the salted walkway, past the line of gleaming SUVs and polished sedans that packed the drive. My beat-up hatchback sat like an intruder among them, its dented door reflecting back distorted patches of holiday light. The door swung open before I could knock. My sister stood there in an apron dusted with flour, her lipstick immaculate, her smile wide and too rehearsed. "Well, there you are," she said. "We were wondering if you'd make it this year." Inside, the house smelled of rosemary and butter, coats piled high on the rack. Children ran shrieking between the rooms, their socks sliding across hardwood floors. I stepped in, clutching the bottle of wine I had brought. A modest gift, nothing extravagant, but the best I could manage. "Shoes off, please," she added lightly, as if to remind me of the rules I had grown up under in this very house. Her house now. I slipped them off and followed her into the dining room. The table stretched long and heavy with platters. Roasted turkey glistening, bowls of mashed potatoes, bright cranberry sauce catching the light. Every chair was filled except one, at the end of a smaller folding table tucked against the wall. The kids' table. My sister motioned casually. "That one's for you. Hope you don't mind. Space is a little tight this year." I froze for half a heartbeat. Every eye seemed to glance my way, then look back down quickly as if nothing had happened. Laughter resumed, but it was thinner now, strained at the edges. My face warmed, though the house itself was cool. I nodded once, forced a smile, and slid into the chair built for someone a decade younger. The silverware felt small in my hands. Around me the children chattered, oblivious. At the main table my family lifted glasses, toasting to blessings. No one looked at me, but that knot in my chest didn't tighten, it loosened, because this time I had come prepared. The children hardly noticed me at first. They were too busy jabbing each other with forks and trading jokes whispered behind their hands. But once the novelty wore off, their eyes wandered. One of my nephews, 10, sharp-tongued, already mimicking the adults, leaned across and grinned. "Why are you sitting here, Uncle?" he asked, loud enough for the main table to hear. "Aren't you too old for the kids' table?" Laughter rippled, spilling from the smaller table to the larger one. My sister's husband, tie loosened, cheeks flushed with wine, smirked as he carved into the turkey. "That's where he fits best, kiddo," he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. The words stung more than I let show. I busied myself buttering a roll that I didn't want, keeping my eyes down. But inside, the familiar ache spread like a bruise. It wasn't about the table. It never had been. It was about years of being the afterthought, the punchline, the one they measured themselves against to feel taller. I remembered birthdays where my gifts were laughed at, Christmas mornings when my stocking hung noticeably lighter, family gatherings where my seat always seemed temporary. It wasn't that I had failed. I had built a quiet life, modest but my own. But to them, modesty meant lack, and lack meant failure. The voices at the adult table swelled, filling the room with a kind of careless authority. My sister bragged about her new kitchen remodel, gleaming white counters and imported tile. My brother-in-law boasted about closing a deal at work, his bonuses spoken of as if they were trophies. Their friends chimed in, offering nods and shallow compliments. I sat among the children, their plates smeared with cranberry sauce, their hands sticky, their laughter unfiltered. And oddly enough, it wasn't the worst place to be. The kids didn't judge me. To them, I was just another grown-up, one who sometimes joined their jokes instead of scolding them. Still, the hum of derision from the main table pressed in like static, constant, and unrelenting. Across the room, my mother caught my eye. For a moment, I thought I saw something softer there. Regret, maybe, or apology. But then she looked away quickly, turning to refill someone's glass. The warmth I had hoped for flickered and died. I chewed in silence, letting their words wash over me. The knot that had loosened earlier shifted again, not with despair this time, but with something steadier. Anticipation, patience, because I knew what they didn't. Beneath the table in my bag sat a plain manila envelope, its corners worn, its contents heavy with ink and law. It wasn't wealth flaunted like a trophy, not a remodel to show off or a bonus to brag about. It was something simpler, sharper, more final. As the meal went on and plates emptied, I felt the moment drawing closer, step by step, like a storm rolling in. They didn't know it yet, but the afterthought was about to become the center of the table. By the time dessert was mentioned, the house had settled into that familiar post-feast haze. Plates were pushed aside, belts discreetly loosened, glasses topped off once more. The children squirmed in their chairs, restless and sticky-fingered, while the adults leaned back, smug and satisfied. "Pumpkin pie's cooling on the counter," my sister announced, rising from her throne at the head of the table. "And I made pecan too, since Dan insists Thanksgiving isn't complete without it." She kissed her husband on the cheek, a gesture polished for display. I watched them all with a kind of detached clarity. Their laughter felt louder now, exaggerated, their boasts sharper. Each word pricked at old wounds, reopening scars I had convinced myself had healed. Sitting there, I realized that I had been carrying those wounds into every room of this house for years. And then something shifted. It wasn't anger. Not the hot, reckless kind that makes you lash out. It was colder, steadier, like ice forming on still water. For the first time, I saw them not as giants whose approval I'd chased my entire life, but as people flawed, insecure, wrapped in the fragile armor of possessions and status. The kids at my table were arguing over who would get the biggest slice of pie. Their voices rose and fell in waves, innocent and oblivious. One of them tugged at my sleeve, asking if I'd come play video games after dinner. The sweetness of it caught me off guard. Here, at the lesser table, was the only place I had been offered belonging without condition. That was the moment I decided. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about humiliating them the way they had humiliated me. It was about finally setting the record straight. Not with shouting or bitterness, but with truth. I slipped my hand into the bag at my feet, feeling the firm weight of the envelope. The paper inside carried months of careful choices, signatures inked with certainty, Nights spent wondering if this moment was worth the price. And every time I had doubted, I thought of dinners like this, rooms where I was tolerated rather than welcomed, pitied rather than respected. The sound of a fork tapping glass pulled me back. My brother-in-law, red-faced and boisterous, was standing, proposing a toast. To family, he said, raising his wine. To success, to hard work paying off, and to those who know how to keep their place. The words struck like flint on stone, igniting something final in me. I rose slowly, surprising even myself. The room stilled. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, expecting a clumsy echo of his toast, maybe even a joke to soften the awkwardness of my presence. Instead, I placed the envelope on the center of the table, sliding it across the linen until it sat between the wineglasses and the untouched pie. "You've all saved me a seat tonight," I said quietly. "Now let me return the favor." The silence that followed was heavier than any laugh, any insult. For the first time, they were listening. For a moment, no one moved. The envelope sat there like a trespasser, its beige surface stark against the white linen, more unsettling than any shout could have been. My sister's hand, still holding the carving knife, hovered above the turkey as though frozen mid-act. My brother-in-law squinted, his grin faltering. "What's this?" he asked finally, his voice too loud in the quiet. "Paperwork," I said simply, though my heart was thudding so hard I thought they could hear it. The children leaned closer, their curiosity sparking, but the adults stiffened. My sister set down the knife and wiped her hands on her apron, her smile stretching thin. "Always so dramatic," she said, with a laugh that carried a sharp edge. "You couldn't just bring dessert like everyone else?" Their laughter returned, but weaker now, wary. I could feel the weight of their skepticism pressing on me, daring me to back down, to fold into the old role of being the family oddity, the one whose gestures never quite landed. But I didn't sit. My palms rested lightly on the back of the chair, grounding me. Inside, a battle raged. Part of me wanted to tear open the envelope and spill its contents right there, to watch their faces crumble. But another part hesitated, because beneath the desire for vindication was something more vulnerable. Fear. What if the truth changed nothing? What if even this act, the one I had built up for months, was just another story they twisted into a punchline? I thought of my mother's brief glance earlier, the almost regret in her eyes. I thought of the years I had swallowed words, convinced myself to endure for the sake of family. And I realized I was standing not just for myself, but for every version of me that had been dismissed, sidelined, diminished. The silence stretched, broken only by the ticking of the old clock on the mantel. My brother-in-law chuckled finally, leaning back in his chair. "Come on, don't keep us guessing. What is it this time? Another one of your projects?" He lingered on the word like it was an insult, as though my entire life's work was a hobby compared to his corner office job. I met his gaze, steady now. "It's not a project. It's permanence." The room shifted, a ripple moving through the air. My sister frowned, folding her arms. "You always do this, show up, make everything about you. This is Thanksgiving. Can't you just let us have one peaceful dinner without turning it into a performance?" Her words stung, but beneath them I heard the tremor of something else. Unease. She didn't know yet, but she sensed it, that the ground beneath her feet wasn't as solid as she thought. I let the silence hang a little longer, then slid the envelope closer to her plate. The gesture was deliberate, calm. "It's not a performance," I said softly. It's the truth, and I think you've all earned the right to see it. Every pair of eyes locked on the envelope. Forks paused mid-air. Even the children, sensing the crackle in the air, quieted. The storm was no longer gathering. It was here, waiting for me to open it. The envelope's weight was nothing in my hands, yet it felt heavier than the turkey, heavier than the carved oak table itself. My fingers traced its edge as though steadying myself on a ledge before a leap. I broke the seal. The tearing sound cracked through the silence, sharp as a gunshot. Every head turned, every laugh died. I slid out the crisp stack of papers and spread them on the linen, the ink stark against the light. Deed of transfer, property title, my name clear and undeniable. First, no one spoke. My sister leaned forward, her breath catching as her eyes raced over the text. My brother-in-law craned his neck, frowning, disbelief etching lines deeper into his face. Finally, my sister whispered, This can't be right." "It is," I said. My voice surprised me with how calm it sounded. "The house is mine, bought and signed last month. I didn't think it mattered when I showed up tonight, but then you put me here." I gestured toward the children's table. "And I realized it does." The air thickened. Someone at the main table muttered, "You're joking." But their voice wavered. My brother-in-law snatched the papers, scanning them as if sheer will could erase the ink. His face reddened, jaw clenching. "This is some trick," he spat. "You can't just walk in here." "I didn't walk in." I cut him off, my words firm now, anchored. "I came home. Legally, this is my house. Every wall, every window, every plate on this table." A murmur rose, sharp and uneven, like glass cracking under heat. My sister's hands trembled as she pressed them against the table. "Why would you do this?" she demanded, her voice breaking. "Why not tell us?" I looked at her then, not as the sister who always outshone me, not as the hostess who commanded this room, but as a woman suddenly small, caught unprepared. For a moment, I almost softened. Almost. "Because for years," I said quietly, "you've made sure I never had a seat here. I was the one you could laugh at, dismiss, sit with the kids. Tonight, I wanted you to feel what I've felt every holiday I've walked into this house." The children stared wide-eyed, their plates forgotten. My mother's fork slipped from her hand, clattering onto porcelain. Her lips parted, but no words came. The silence that followed was seismic, rattling deeper than the clink of silverware or the laughter that had filled the room earlier. It was the sound of a hierarchy collapsing, of walls shifting. I stood straighter, the weight gone from my chest. The knot, years old, had finally unraveled. "Dessert served," I said, gesturing to the papers. "Take as much time as you need." And with that, I stepped back from the table. The power that had been theirs all their lives sat neatly in black and white before them. The house had changed hands. So had the story. The room never quite recovered. Even as the pie was cut, the scent of cinnamon and sugar curling into the air, no one reached for a slice. The papers sat in the center like an altar, untouched, undeniable. Forks nudged plates, glasses shifted nervously, but the easy rhythm of Thanksgiving had broken. I slipped back into my chair at the children's table, the one they had assigned me, and found the kids staring, wide-eyed and unsure. A little girl whispered, "Is it true? Do you really own the whole house?" I nodded, but softly. "Yes, but that doesn't mean it isn't still your home too." Their shoulders relaxed. They returned to giggles, to arguing over whipped cream, their world quick to reset. And I envied them for it, for how easily they let go. Across the main table, the adults couldn't. My brother-in-law sat rigid, jaw working, his fork untouched. My sister's smile had cracked entirely, leaving her raw and uncertain. She glanced at me often, as though searching for the brother she remembered, or maybe for the brother she had never really seen. My mother finally broke the silence. Her voice was thin, like parchment worn with age. "You could have told me." I met her eyes. There was no anger in mine, only tiredness. "I wanted to show you." Words wouldn't have been enough. They never were. She lowered her gaze, and that was answer enough. The evening wound down in fragments. Some excused themselves early. Others lingered awkwardly, clinking glasses too loudly, as if noise could patch the crack in the room. My sister cleared dishes with hands that shook, avoiding my eyes. When the house grew quiet, when even the children had drifted into the den with their games, I stood. The weight I carried and felt lighter now, replaced by something I hadn't expected. Calm. Not triumph, not gloating. Just release. I walked slowly through the house. My footsteps echoed on hardwood I now owned. Past family photos that showed smiling faces where I often stood at the edge, cropped by the frame. The walls seemed taller, the rooms more spacious, as though they were stretching to welcome me at last. At the door, I pulled on my shoes. My sister finally spoke, her voice low from the kitchen. "So, what happens now?" I paused with my hand on the knob. The air smelled of rosemary still, though faint, fading. I thought of all the years I'd wished for a seat at the big table, for recognition, for respect. Tonight I had claimed more than that, but it no longer felt like victory, it felt like a turning of the page. "You keep celebrating," I said, "but next year, maybe save me a different seat." Then I stepped out into the night. Snowflakes drifted gently under the porch light. The world hushed and silvered. Behind me, the house glowed, uncertain, unsettled. Ahead, the night stretched wide and clear. For the first time, I didn't feel small at all.